Okay, we should be live. Hello, hello, and welcome to the Book Troop live show for the month of November, where we read "Someone in the Attic" by Andrea Mara. Oh, look at that! It's a different version.
I know.
Cool,
I feel
different
like I like
cover.
yours.
Yeah, I like yours. That one's cool
I'm
too.
just generic though.
Yeah, I know. Generic thriller covers, but still
Yeah.
cool. Cool to see the differences. We are here to discuss this book, and I'm joined by my friends Sharni and Cat, which I'm so excited to have you both here. Thank you so much for taking the time today to hang out. I'm very excited because Sharni I've never had on the channel before, so lovely to see a new face around here. And Cat, you have before, like at least once before, but it's been a minute, I think.
Yeah, I think it was last November actually. Also.
Oh no way. Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Exactly a year then.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to everybody in the chat who is already joining us. I see you all, and I appreciate you all for being here on this lovely Saturday. Hi, Gavin. Anyways, so we are going to be talking about Someone in the Attic. If you would both like to introduce yourself first, as we're getting started here. And I would love to know in the chat, if you have read along with us this month, maybe you could put a little like pink heart in the chat if you did read along, and maybe you could put like a black heart in the chat if you didn't get around to reading it, or maybe if you DNF'd it or something like that, just so we can get a visual. But we will stay spoiler free at the beginning of this. And then Sharni, would you like to introduce yourself? Maybe tell us a little bit about your channel and what you do on BookTube.
Okay. Hello, I'm Sharni. My channel is just Sharni and Books. And yeah, I don't know. I just do the generic booktube stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've been a bit slack this year. So maybe December will be my month and I'll be back on it. But yeah, just normal booktube stuff.
What are your
crazy.
favorite what are your favorite genres usually to read?
I feel like I read kind of everything, although I did realize, like, when I was thinking about this book, I don't actually read that many thrillers. So it was kind of refreshing to have one, because I feel like that and probably sci-fi, like my least read genres. I feel like I normally read like lit fic, romance, mysteries, I think are my favorite. I don't know. But I feel like I read anything. Yeah.
Good to know. And Cat?
My channel is Cat Chats. I also do the typical booktube stuff, though I've been on a bit of hiatus, but I will be back. I also like to read a little bit of everything, but mostly thriller, romance, horror stuff.
Yes. I know, I feel like you're always reading stuff like early that I'm really excited to read. So I always look forward to like seeing how you're gonna feel first, because I'm like, if Cat hates it, there's a good chance that I'll hate it. If he loves it, there's a good chance that I'll love it.
Oh no.
So I always love watching your vlogs.
Oh, thank you.
But yes, I know, look at that. Everybody's like on theme with the pink and the black.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, was that even planned? I don't know, but I love it. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for everybody for joining us. It looks like there was quite a bit of pink hearts in the chat, so I'm really surprised. I always appreciate all the participation in the book club every time. And then why don't we, before we get into ratings, maybe would one of you want to, pitch a like non-spoilery synopsis for anybody who hasn't read the book yet and is just curious to see what it's about?
Sure.
If you don't mind.
I don't mind. Do you want? I guess I can do it. I don't know. I don't mind. Someone in the Attic. The very first chapter are following Anya, and she's in the bath and someone comes out of her attic and she dies in the very first chapter. And then the remainder of the book, we're following her old friend from school, Julia. And she has just moved back to the town in Ireland. And yeah, her daughter shows her this video on TikTok. She's like, hey, look at this video. And it's a video of someone like climbing out of the attic. And Julia's like, wait a second, that's my house. And then she's like, oh my God, who was in our attic? And then, yeah, the book is just her trying to figure out who was in her attic. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that was great. That's perfect. Yeah, trying to figure out who's in the attic, what's going on with this attic. Perfect. Well, thank you for that. Okay, so should we just jump right into spoilers? Or not spoilers, sorry, ratings. Like spoilers right away. No, look at that. Sharni made me want to read it. Wow, just sold it. Influenced. Okay, cool. Well, while we talk about our ratings, if you want to put in the chat what you rated this book out of 5 stars, I would appreciate it. I did notice there was quite a bit of DNFs this one on the Discord, on the BookTube Discord. A lot of people were talking about DNFing this one. So it will be interesting to jump into some spoilers to talk about how this book ends up wrapping up for everybody that DNF'd it. But I don't actually know what either of you rated it, so I'm very excited, very scared. Sharni, do you want to kick us off with what you rated this book, and then maybe a brief, non-spoilery why you rated it that?
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't even sure what I was going to rate it, but I am interested to hear what everyone else, because you both read more thrillers than me. I think I'm going to give it a 2 stars, I think. Okay. And only because, I don't know, I didn't love the reveal and like a couple of other, I don't know, I feel like with like a domestic thriller, like I prefer it if it is, like, not to be a man hater, but I kind of prefer it if it is like a woman who's like, you know, getting a revenge to a man. Like, I don't want, this isn't really my style of, I kind of prefer if it's like a man dies and that's what we're following. not to be a man hater, sorry, man in the chat. But like my favorite book of all time is Big Little Lies. And that's like, if that's the domestic type of mystery, that's more of a mystery, but that's like the style I think I am realizing I prefer. This was like, I don't know. I don't really love like rich people in this sense, kind of. I don't know.
You're like, a woman dies, 0 stars.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love it. Yeah.
I'm also kind of torn on my rating. I'm not like 100% set on it. This could change, but I'm thinking like a 2.5. And I also like didn't love it, but I'm giving it props because it like really kept my attention for some reason. Like I haven't been reading a ton lately. I've been kind of in a slump, but I finished this in like 2 days. Like it was just, I guess it was kind of just like easy to get to, and it was entertaining enough. It kept my attention. So I am giving it props like for that. But I also didn't really love the reveal. I think my main thing, like I thought there was just like way too many things going on.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I know. I think I was hoping we'd all have kind of like different opinions on here, but I also gave it 2 stars. I was not the biggest fan of this, sadly. I mean, I will agree that I thought that this book was like fast paced. It definitely held my attention. Like it wasn't one of those thrillers that I found to be boring, which I think is a great thing, because some thrillers, when they're boring, like that's my biggest gripe, and like so annoying. But it was at least fast paced. I think for me it was only 2 stars because I just found so many of the character, or like Julia as a character, I found her to be so frustrating for so many different reasons. And the reveals at the end, in my opinion, were so underwhelming that I kept feeling like, well, what the frick was the point of like half of the things? You know, like it just kind of felt like a waste of time at the end of the day with a lot of what was happening in the book. But I gave it 2 stars instead of 1 star because, like you said, it was fast paced, it was easy to get through. And I also did find some of these scenes to be kind of creepy. And I do love a good kind of like creepy setting in my thrillers. Like I just eat that shit up. So for those reasons, I did enjoy some aspects of it, but it wasn't a perfect thriller for me, unfortunately. It does seem like in the chat we have quite a mix, even though I saw, for the most part, I saw a lot of like lower reviews for this one. So I'm sorry if this turns a little bit into a roast session for anybody that enjoyed this book. I'm so happy for you. I wanted to love it. But that's interesting that you say that, Justin. Yeah, I could see that it kind of does have a similar feel to Lisa Jewell's writing, even though I do think Lisa Jewell books are superior in my opinion. But anyways, so I was curious, first question I wanted to ask you is, have you read any books from this author before, or is this your first? Because I did notice on Goodreads, I think she's published like 11 books now. And this is the first book that I've ever read from her. I actually haven't even really heard of this author before this, but I was just curious if either of you had experience.
No, this was my first.
Before?
Oh, hang on. Sorry.
This was my first one, and I have also never heard of her before.
Yeah, I hadn't either, and I don't know if it's like maybe she's just not as popular in the US, because I do think that she mainly publishes in the UK, but her most popular book is called No One Saw a Thing, that published last year, I guess, and that one has like 28,000 ratings on Goodreads, but I've honestly like never even heard of her stuff, so I was really surprised. But maybe this is like a US debut or something like that. I'm not totally sure what the situation is there, but
I do think I saw that somewhere, that this was like her first big push in the US.
Yeah, that would make sense. What about you, Sharni? Have you read her books before?
No, I have not. But I like, a friend of mine has read more of her books, and I think they said that they liked other books of her. I should have asked which ones specifically, but they said they liked other ones better. Okay. So maybe, I don't know, maybe this is just not this author's best work. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, so she is an Irish author, and it's her first US release, apparently. So that's interesting. Yeah, I've also never heard of this author before, and I thought it was a debut at first too, but I guess it's not. Goodreads says that she's actually published quite a bit, so very interesting. So I guess just to jump into talking about this book, just without spoilers for this first one, how did you feel about following Julia's character? Like, did you enjoy following from Julia's character? I know in this book, it was mostly told from Julia's perspective, and then we do get some chapters that are kind of like flashbacks to like her college years, and then we also do get some chapters that were like told from the son's perspective that were just kind of thrown in there. So how did you feel about Julia as a narrator, and then also like those other kind of chapter styles? Like, did you find yourself gravitating towards one more than the other, or how did you feel about the writing in general?
Yeah, I agree with you that I found Julia to be a little bit annoying. I didn't love her, and the flashback chapters were kind of like giving Pretty Little Lies, but like not as a compliment. Like,
you're so right.
Not as a compliment. I didn't mean that as like it was like giving Pretty Little Lies, but like, yeah, I feel like the chapters from this. I have a lot of opinions about the son, considering I have a son. But yeah, the chapters from the son, I feel like those were like creepy because I feel like anything that involves like a kid in a thriller is kind of like, so it was like a bit creepy. But yeah, I didn't really like Julia, unfortunately.
Yeah, she irritated me so much. I just feel like she is too dumb to live. Like,
yeah,
I got like in the beginning when she was being showed these videos and she's like, oh no, like it's edited, like blah blah blah. But there was one point where she said that, and I like looked at where I was reading the ebook, and I was like 70% of the way through, and she's like, no, it's edited. I'm like, girl, like,
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
You need to get it.
Like gaslighting her own son. It was like annoying me so much. Like he kept saying like, there's someone coming out of the attic and like breathing over my bed at night. And she's like, no, there's no one there. I'm like, can you stop? Like if my son came to me and was like, someone like is sneaking into a house, I'm like, bye, pack up your bags. We're leaving. We're not living here anymore. Like, sorry. Like what? She was like gaslighting her own kid. I'm like, oh my God, the poor boy.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Like, Julia was so frustrating to me because she kept dismissing her son's concerns every single turn. She'd be like, and it felt like every chapter would end with the son being like, oh my God, the man like that lives in our attic. And then it would just be like ignored and like on to the next thing. And like the son just kept getting ignored. Like, what is going on? Like, listen to your kid. Like, she cared so much about like protecting her children or whatever, but then like her actions said very differently because it's like she never took it seriously. And yeah, like,
and it would be one thing if they had like no evidence and he was just making it up, then it'd be like, okay, you kind of like, but they had evidence that someone was in the house, and he was like, someone is in our house, and she's still like, no, you don't worry. And she just kept saying, at one point she said, I promise you there's no one like coming in. Like she even used the word promise. I'm like, do not promise your small child something that you cannot like guarantee, first of all. And like his concerns were quite valid. Like,
no, it was just so frustrating how she kept dismissing the kids, but then also with the video thing, like how it just saying, dude, it annoyed me so bad. And she was just like, Photoshop. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, do you not find that insanely creepy? Okay, even if it was Photoshop, do you not find that insanely creepy that like somebody's targeting you and like wants you to see this and is like being sneaky about deleting the videos and stuff? Like, I don't understand why she wouldn't take it more seriously. Like, this is scary. Oh man. Yeah, so okay, why don't we go ahead and jump into spoilers because I'm afraid to like spoil anything as we get into talking about this, because there are some things that I want to touch on for spoilery moments. So so if you have not yet read the book, then we will from this point on be jumping into spoilers. You have been warned. Okay, so I guess first thing about the book that I wanted to talk about in terms of spoilers is like, was there anything that you personally found really creepy, or were there any moments that stood out to you as like, oh my God, like if that had happened to me, like I would be so freaked out by that within this book?
I think the opening scene with Anya like remained the creepiest part for me throughout the entire book. But I think other than that, it was when we were reading from the sun. Like one part where he's specifically like hiding under his blanket and he hears someone breathing.
Yeah.
And then also when he had like one line where he was like, I'm not afraid that I'm not alone. I'm afraid that I'm not alone. And like that is really creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. Yeah, definitely for me. Yeah, especially being a mom of like a little boy. The one where he was under the blankets, like, and he was smelling like the oils from like, he was like saying like, oh, it's from when I was sick, the oils. And like he could say, like he was saying that he could hear the breathing. That I thought was creepy. Yeah, I agree. The first chapter as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I would agree that the first chapter for me was definitely the creepiest things. I loved the way that it was written when it was like 30 seconds from now she'll be dead or whatever. Like when it kept like foreshadowing, even in that first chapter, I was like, oh my god, like this setup is so creepy, and I was like really loving it. And then yeah, the moments with the son, like there were so many creepy moments with him that I was really enjoying. But then I also feel like this author was doing a lot of things where she would like try to end the chapter with like a creepy little thing, and then it would amount to like nothing. You know, where she'd be like, "There's somebody under the bed," and then the next chapter would be like, "It was the bunny, like tickling your feet or something." I'm like, bro, what? Like, it was just so much build up, and it didn't really, you know, like lead up to anything. So that was frustrating. I saw so many people too mentioning like, why aren't they just getting like cameras for the house, you know, or like doing that? Because I don't know why that was never discussed. Like getting a fucking camera, like just putting it up in the son's bedroom to see if anybody's actually coming into his room at night. Like, why wasn't that ever a thing? You know?
Yeah. I don't
Yeah, and then as far as let's see, so to anybody that DNF'd it, I'll try to quickly explain like what ends up happening in the second half of this book, because so this whole time we're like right away at the beginning of this book, you know, there's that creepy neighbor dude. His name's Alistair, and he is like asking all these weird questions, and he's kind of like, oh, like I really love attics as a kid, like I was a huge fan of attics, like whatever, being super creepy. And right away I was like, I don't trust this man immediately. But then she confronts him almost like right away, and he's like, oh well, like he has like all these different excuses, like a billion excuses for everything, and so he's kind of like off the suspect list right at the start. And then we go on to this whole side story about how like back when she was in college, there was this girl Donna that like they did her so dirty, and they had all this history with her, like something happened. And so there's this whole side story of it being like, oh, is this just Donna's brother trying to get revenge for like what happened to her back when they were in college, kind of thing. And so the book kind of takes like a tangent over here to the side of like that whole side storyline. But then we find out, no, he's actually harmless, and he's like on crutches and can't even get into the attic anyways. So that is completely gone. And then it ends up turning out to be, and there's also like other side things too, like a billion different things on the side of like neighborhood drama and like stuff like that. Big reveal at the end of the book is that, oh, it actually is Alistair who is like the original suspect number one. And we find out that it was because of like her business advice, like the legal advice that she gave to her best friend Anya. And so I guess my question to you is, how did you feel about the reveal with it being Alistair? And like, were you suspecting him from the start, or like how did you feel about that twist in general?
Yeah, I thought the reveal was so annoying. It was like such a letdown. I'm like, it hurt because of the business. I'm like, you kidding me? I'm like, oh my God. I was like, that was so disappointing. And also, yeah, he was not off my suspect list, because when he did that whole, like when she went to confront him, and then he was like, he had all these explanations for every single thing. He was like, oh, I only knew your nickname was Juju because when I let your friend in at the gate, she called you Juju. And I only knew like this because I only knew you had that bottle of alcohol in your fridge because you had it in your bag. Like he had an answer for everything. But the only thing he didn't have an answer for is, or he didn't say, like they didn't say it in the book, he had like insulation fluff on his shirt, and that was not cleared up. So I'm like, he still had the insulation fluff. So I'm like, he's not off my substance list. I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, I don't think it was the most exciting reveal, personally.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It just felt like, I don't know if like a cop out is the right word, but it just kind of like boring. Like I also thought it was him like pretty early on, and then so many explanations for why it wasn't him, and then it ends up being him. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Like, no wow moment.
That's what I was like so like upset about, is because like if he had had a better motive or a better like more interesting reason to be doing this, I would have been like, okay, maybe. But like the fact that it was like, oh, like your friend Anya, whatever, ruined his life supposedly, and then she had just given her friend legal advice, like that's the reason he's gunning for her so hard. Like, I'm sorry, what?
And how did he even know also?
Yeah, like it didn't make any sense, because I'm like, oh my God, so Anya just gets a quick death in the bathtub, even though she's the one that's been like, you know, ruining your life, and then Julia, like somebody who just gave her advice, like gets like tortured for months in the attic or whatever. Like, what?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it was Alistair apparently in the attic, which I also find like so crazy to believe, because it's like, so he was actually in the house, like what?
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, I didn't like if he had had a better motive, I would have been maybe a little bit more on board with him doing it. But the fact that his motive was so lame was like very frustrating for me. Like it was the reason why I wanted to rate this lower. But then I also like, how did you feel about like the whole side storyline going on about like Donna and the flashback chapters? Because like, I don't know about you, but I would have been actually really on board for the story to be about like Donna's brother seeking revenge, because I kind of do like that storyline made more sense to me and was more interesting. Even though I did think the whole Donna thing ended up being kind of like weak and not as fun as it could have been, because when they were talking about like, oh my god, our friend Donna, like, oh my god, we did her so dirty, I was like, oh my god, they like killed her, or like, oh my god, they like locked her in the bathroom.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I was like, my head was going crazy with like all these theories of what they did to their friend. You know, I thought it was gonna be way more juicy, but it was like, no, what ended up happening is they accidentally left her behind at a party, and then she ended up like falling off the roof or something by an accident. Like, it was an accident. You know?
And also they were 25 like that those chapters were like they were 15 or 16. They were 25 in those chapters, and then they just left her behind. Like, your frontal lobe is fully developed, and you're just like, oh, never mind, like no one's gonna check on her at this part. Like, please, like, no. We're girls in this age, like we don't do that.
I was kind of annoyed with that also, because it just felt annoying that we spent so much time on this thing, and then at the end of the book it meant nothing to what was going on.
That's what I mean, like, because all of these chapters about like Donna and the flashbacks and all this, if it wasn't even about them at all, then that was just all a red herring, and like it meant, you know, led to nothing. And so that's why it kind of felt like such a waste of time then to read all these flashbacks of their college years. And I just, like you said, like they're 25 years old, like leaving her behind at a party, like maybe it's a shitty friend thing to do, but like it's not that, like there are far worse things that they could have done, you know?
I think all those chapters did was like paint Anya out to be bad, so that we didn't really, I guess, like we kind of didn't feel bad for her dying, because like she came off pretty bad in those chapters. Like, she was not very nice. So I feel like that's all that did for me, is like change my idea about Anya.
I agree. Yeah, I wish there was just more of that storyline, but in a more interesting way. Like, I feel like the author was onto something with that, but it ended up being very underwhelming, which was unfortunate. Also, why did everyone want to fuck me? I know.
Yeah, that whole sideline with Gabe and the mom, that was like horrific. That was like the scariest part of this book. Like, Heather faking that, like lying about her daughter being assaulted by a grown man. Like, hello, why did you have that? Like, that was actually horrible. Like, the whole thing in general was bad, because firstly, she was saying she was trying to protect her daughter by not telling her what happened to Riley, which is bad enough, because like she needs to know that there's repercussions to her actions to begin with. So she's literally left the country to protect her daughter from telling her that she was the reason her friend was assaulted. And then we find out that her friend wasn't even like assaulted. Like, that's insane to me. Why was that in a book? That's crazy.
That was like my favorite element of the book, actually. It was just so interesting. I was like, oh shit.
I know. It was the smallest part.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with the plot. Like, it was just the side thing. Yeah,
and then the neighbors like installing a spy camera and the whole cheating thing going on with them. Like, there was so much going on.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't know, I was actually so invested in the whole like Riley's friend from back home thing, because I thought that was like one of the most interesting things happening in this book, because I was like, what do you mean, like Riley was responsible for like a grown man coming and assaulting her best friend? I was like, oh my god, like that's so dark. And then like the whole idea of the mom, like that girl's mom, Heather, was like, there was implications that she was sleeping with Gabe, which was like the husband of our main character Julia, and so he had been like financially compensating her or something, because he thought that she was pregnant. And then and then at the end of the book it's like revealed, oh, Heather's actually a fucking liar, and she lied about like the assault, and she lied about the pregnancy and everything. So like everything she ever said was a lie, like, which is crazy, because like that's why they moved to Ireland from San Diego. Like, they literally left because of this, and it wasn't even a thing. Like, it wasn't real. So I was pretty surprised by that. Like, were you surprised to find out that it wasn't real? Like, was that shocking for you, or did you kind of see that coming?
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I was way more invested. Like, I wanted more of that storyline, honestly, because the side plots were more juicy than the main plot, to be honest. Like, that was interesting. But also, the cheating neighbors bit, I was so like, what the fuck? Like, it was so confusing, because she said like that's why there was a camera installed in their house, right? It was because the neighbors that had lived there before, she was like sleeping with the man or something like that. And there was the whole side plot of like their fire alarm was like going off or something, and then when they opened the fire alarm, there was like a camera in there. And I'm like, well, then why didn't they like look at the camera footage or try to find, like, because I'm like, depending on where that camera was, I'm like, couldn't they see what's going on with the attic or something?
Oh yeah.
Actually, why didn't they look at that?
Did they not have access to the camera footage, or like what's going on? Like, I don't know. But I agree, that was kind of like, whoa, what? Oh my gosh, what else? I swear there was like so much at the end of this book that I wanted to touch on. God. I know, was there anything else in particular that you found shocking about the ending of this book, or like any of the plot lines that you like weren't expecting?
I don't think so. I know I really didn't like the very last chapter when we get like a couple sentences from every single person in the book. I'm like, why are we getting this like cute little montage?
Yeah, no, it felt so like wrapped up in a perfect little bow at the end.
Yeah.
I agree.
And characters that weren't even that big, like Glyn and Lynn or whoever, like I'm like, I didn't need an update on them. I don't even know who they are. Like I feel like there was like so many characters, and then at the end getting information about the ones that really weren't important, like to me. I don't know. I was like, okay.
I know, the ending was so wrapped up in a bow because it was like they stayed in Dublin, but they had to move. They moved to like a new house. The final sentence was like, in their new home, there is no one in the attic, but there is always someone in the home. Heart. It just felt so cheesy and like not needed, you know? Like I feel like if the ending could have done a really cool thing where it ended with like, and then I hear a creak in the attic, and then boom, ending. You know, like, it could have done something kind of creepy and ominous at the end. But no, it didn't. Can I ask if Tony's death happening with a coffee machine? Someone killed him. Was that a hint? I don't remember anything about Tony's character, to be honest, or Tony's death. I don't recall.
No, I don't think he was killed. I think it was just kind of like karma because he bought this machine for his wife who didn't drink coffee, and then it blew up when he was using it.
True.
I don't think it was purposeful.
That's true. Yes. And then one of my like questions that I always like to ask is, would you read more from this author in the future, or is this like a one and done kind of scenario where you're like, I don't think she's for me, or like, do you think you would give her another chance in the future after this?
I don't know. If there was one that like everyone was raving about, then maybe I would. But like like I said, I feel like I don't pick up that many thrillers. So if I'm gonna pick one up, I feel like it needs to have like raving reviews so that I can be like confident that I'm going into a good one, sort of thing.
Yeah,
I kind of feel the same. My answer was a little bit different because I also thought this was the debut. So I was like, yeah, maybe I would try her out again. But like knowing she's published so much, like, I don't think so. Sorry.
No, I agree. It's kind of like knowing that this wasn't actually a debut. This is like 11 books deep. I'm like, maybe she's just not the author for me. I mean, I think I would read her again. Yeah, if she had a big thriller that was like popping off and getting great reviews, I'd probably read from her again. But I don't know. Unless that happens, I don't know if I'm super interested to read from her again. Just because the protagonist was like so frustrating. I'm like, if that's a trend throughout the books, then I don't think I could do it again.
The audiobook was good. Did anyone listen to the audiobook?
I did. Yeah, I did like the audiobook as well.
Because when I started it and I was like, oh, it's set in Ireland. I'm like, I bet it has the Irish accent. So I got the audiobook for that. And then like when they were doing the phone calls, it had like the little phone effect. So it sounded like the other person was like on the phone. Like I like when audiobooks do that. So I thought the audiobook was like a fun listen. But
I do too. I love when audiobooks include that extra little effort of like sound effects and stuff. And I didn't know when I had chosen this book that it would take place in Ireland. So that was kind of like a fun surprise. And I did like the audiobook narrator as well. So that was pretty cool. But okay, and then final question that I do like to ask is like if you had any like books, movies, TV shows that you would compare this to, maybe like if they didn't like this, maybe like something else that they can check out that has like maybe similar vibes or similar plot or anything like that.
So if you're interested in like the frogging, someone living in your house aspect, it's like a true crime show, like it's real. It's called Frogging Hiding in My House or something like that. I think it's on Hulu. That is interesting and really creepy. And also this kind of reminded me of The Stranger Upstairs by Lisa Matlin. It's not like totally the same, but some of the writing, and I also disliked that one. So if you like this one, maybe you would like that one.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, I also read that one and I also didn't like it. So I think I'm thinking of the right book. I don't know. I feel like I don't have that many suggestions because I don't think I have that many books that like are similar to this that I've read that I can think of.
Yeah,
so I don't think I know.
The one movie I was going to mention is actually this one, I See You. It's like a thriller kind of horror movie that involves like this frogging thing where like there's people in the house and like it's creepy and weird. This was a movie that came out in like 2019, I think, and it's a really, really good one, really creepy. So I would definitely recommend that. And as far as like books go, I don't know. I also haven't read too many things like this where there's like somebody else like living in the house. But one it did remind me of is The Wrong Family by Taryn Fisher. Which was actually a book troop pick like way back. It was like one of the first ever book troop picks, and I really didn't like that book very much at all. So it's like I can't really recommend it, but that one does have kind of a similar feel where it's like, oh, somebody living in the house kind of vibes. But I don't know.
There must be some good books with this premise though, because it's like a fun, like it is a scary idea, like someone like living in the house. Like I would hate that. Like that like if
I was gonna say
it done well, it would have been so scary to me. Yeah, especially like being a mom that like a single mom with a son, or I shouldn't say that online. Like, no, I live with like 5 burly men here. I feel like this is like a scary idea for me, but just wasn't really that. Really
I know it had like so much potential to be creepy and to be great, but the premise definitely did not live up to its potential.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Oh, I can see that. Like we used to live here a little bit just because of the house, creepy house vibes. I can see that could work. Oh, and the Boy movie. Is that doll movie? I don't know anything about that, but all right. Well, I would like to end this actually with asking either of you, like, do you have a favorite thriller that you've read this year? Or if not a favorite thriller specifically, then like, do you have a favorite book that you've read this year that you would recommend? Since this one ended up kind of being a flop for all of us.
I haven't read this. I was actually thinking back after I read this. I'm like, wait, how many thrillers have I actually read like recently? I don't even think I've read any that's like an actual thriller this year. I think like anything that is like closer would be like mysteries. I think my favorite book that I've read this year is The Bandit Queens, which I don't think is even a mystery. It's like a lit fic, but there's like a mystery element because like people are dying. It's like it's set in India, and it is about this woman who her husband like went missing. I know I said I'm a man hater, and this recommendation is not going to like make me sound any better, but her husband went missing, and then all the other women in her village, like they think that she killed her husband. So then these women are coming up to her and they're like, hey, can you help me kill my husband too? Because like all of them have like really crappy husbands. And so she's got to try and help all these women like kill their husbands, but she never killed her husband originally. So she's just like trying to kill off all these men.
Sounds like
so it's not fun. Well, that's why I picked it up, but it's not like a cozy mystery in the Finley Donovan sense. It's definitely like I think it's just like general fiction, but it feels like almost like a mystery because there is like all the deaths. So I think that's my favorite book that is like kind of in this genre.
Nice.
I think one of my favorite thrillers I've read this year is also kind of the same, where it's like leaning general fiction. Love Letters to a Serial Killer by Tasha Coriel, I think. It's about a woman who starts writing to a serial killer in prison. He's like just arrested, currently going through trial. And she first like writes to him and is like, you're horrible, I hate you, but then continues writing to him and ends up like falling in love with him.
Oh, I've seen that one around and I'm so curious about it. So I'm glad to hear you loved it.
I really liked it. It has a bit more of like a lighter tone. Like you're following this woman and you just see her like losing her mind, and she's just like into this guy because he's the first person to give her attention.
Right.
Interesting.
It is interesting. Wow, there's some good recs. I think one of my actual favorite thrillers that I've read this year is actually Kill for Me, Kill for You, which segue is going to be our December book troop pick. I'm actually going to be rereading it and getting my sister to read it with me next month. So if you want to participate next month in the book troop, we'll be reading Kill for Me, Kill for You. It's one of my favorite thrillers because it's like it kind of has that like strangers on a train setup where it's like two women who are strangers meeting and they decide to like help each other commit murder even though they're not in each other's lives, but they've both been wronged by men once again. And there's a running theme here of books that we enjoy and it's great. So that'll be happening next month. There's been quite a bit of books that I've loved this year, but rarely thrillers. I think I've noticed like it's been kind of a drought for thrillers this year. I feel like I've liked so much more horror than I've liked thrillers this year, which is interesting. But very interesting. I think Look in the Mirror is a really great one too. I really liked this one a lot. All right. Well, I think that just about wraps up everything that I had, unless you had anything else that you wanted to mention or shout out at the end of this before we wrap things up.
I don't think so.
No. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining along and reading with us this month. I'm sorry that I ended up being such a flop for so many of us. Hopefully next time we have better luck, but I always appreciate you reading along with us anyways. And thank you so much to my lovely co-host Sharni and Cat for joining me today. I do have their channels linked in the description, so you can check them out if you haven't yet. And thank you all so much for reading with us, and we will see you later. Have a good rest of your Saturday.